you know, this film, A Tale of Two Halves, the first half, I always thought of, you know, Frank O'Connor's Guest of the Nation, Behan's The Hostage, and then in the second half of your, the second act, the second half of the film, you just take it somewhere completely different. I've always wanted to know what goes on in your head. How do you get from A to B with your ideas, with your creativity?
Oh dear, it was very simple with regard to this really, because can I explain what Guests of the Nation is? It's a short story written by Frank O'Connor about the kidnapping of a British soldier by a group of irregulars, IRA people in the 1920s. Brendan Behan turned it into a play called Ungil, The Hostage, yeah. So it's kind of a familiar story where it's almost like a Stockholm Syndrome kind of story. So after I made my first movie, Angel, I thought of this story and I began to write it, and it was really intriguing. But every time the British soldier was killed or died, and the central character went to London in search of the soldier's wife, it fell flat for me. You know, I don't know why it fell flat, it just did. And it became a social realist kind of thing that another director could have made. Maybe a great director like Ken Loach, but not one that I would have made. And then it struck me that if I turned the love interest into a man, what would that do to this story I've been trying to write? And it became very interesting. And in other words, so that Forrest Whitaker's character was saying to Stephen Ray's character, I know I'm going to die. I want you to look after this woman and go and tell her that I was thinking of her before you killed me, basically. And so when I turned that character into somebody who presented as a woman but was a man, the whole captivity scene just changed and became electric for some reason, you know. And the whole thing changed, and then I could finish it very quickly. It's as simple as that, really. I don't know how it happened or why, but that's the way it is with stories. You know, you kind of wait for them to tell you what they want to be, and then they suddenly become what they want to be.
You have an extraordinary facility for stories. I mean, they just seem to come out of your pores.
I wish they did. Are you crazy?
No, but I mean, I've heard you speak about writing a script in relatively short time.
Oh no, that's a different thing. I do love to write dialogue, and I like to write movies, and I think in images. So if I do get going on a screenplay, it happens very quickly.
Quickly, right.
But not if I'm writing a piece of fiction. It's a different thing.
Well, you mentioned your first film, Angel, came out in the early 80s into an Ireland that was really pretty grim and empty of a lot of artistic expression, certainly in the realm of cinema. And it really did arrive like a meteorite into our lives. I'm sure many here have seen the film, and it, as I mentioned before the screening, it really did shift what was possible in the minds of all of us teenagers in Ireland, because we were in our late teens. And you then, with your second film, took quite a left turn in a way with making Company of Wolves, the Angela Carter reinterpretation of Little Red Riding Hood. And Neil, if you don't know the film, made an extraordinary fantasia. And I want to ask what drew you to that, and also I want to note you have a great skill of collaborating with incredible people over the years, and in this instance I'm thinking of Anton Furst, the production designer who created your forest, so to speak. But tell me, what drew you? I mean, it just seemed like, you know, we used to wait for your movies to come out, like the way you'd wait for the next, whatever, Talking Heads record to come out.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I wish I'd known that.
Yeah, no, it was like,
Okay.
And so it was like, wow, she's gone and done this.
No, but it was very. I mean, I met Angela Carter. Well, the first movie I made, you guys probably haven't seen it. It was called Angel. It was a revenge thriller set in the north of Ireland. It was about sectarian killing. It was about people who find it so easy to kill their next door neighbor because their name has a different ring to it. Do you understand what I mean? And normally that would have been done in a very social, realistic way. But because it was about a musician, I wanted to shoot it like a musical for some strange reason. I don't know why, and I did, and it became quite successful. I met Angela Carter in Dublin. She'd written a group of stories called The Company of Wolves. She'd written a short story based on the central story, a radio play, and she asked me, could a movie be made of it? And I read it. I found it intriguing, and I said, Angela, if we find out if we could create this construct of where within the drama people tell other people's stories, yeah. So the fictional characters tell fictional stories, which then becomes the theme of the central kind of narrative. And it was based on a Valerian Borowczyk. No, what was his name? A Polish director who made a movie called The Sargasso Manuscript, actually.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
Beautiful film.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to watch East European movies in Ireland and just wish we could do the same kind of thing these people were doing. Anyway, I proposed this narrative structure to Angela, and she took to it. She really embraced it and got very excited about it. So we wrote this fantastic script,
And it was,
which we were lucky enough to be able to make. But it was a total fantasy, you know. But it was grounded in reality, you know. It was about sexuality. It was about a young girl's pubescence. It was using all the kind of mythos of werewolf movies, you know, to a different purpose. And I just loved doing that. I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't know anybody else would think it was interesting, but they did, you know.
They did, indeed. I'm kind of quickly surveying some of your films just to kind of get this going here and thinking about then after Company of Wolves. I mean, look, you've made, 19 feature films or thereabouts in 40 years. So there's a lot of movies, as well as the television work that you've written. But before the screening tonight, I mentioned how your work has managed to do two things simultaneously. Well, three things. First, it has set benchmarks in Irish cinema as to what is possible. I mentioned, Angel obviously was groundbreaking, but so too were several more of your films. And I want to jump to Michael Collins because Michael Collins is Neil's biopic of one of Ireland's heroic, liberators, and who, like many a war of independence, it's followed by a civil war. And if you haven't seen the film, it's really pretty monumental and made in a very classic Hollywood style, moves with pace, and yet manages to tell a big canvas story. And it really is a kind of a foundation story for the Irish nation. It caused quite a bit of controversy when it came out because the divisions still run pretty deep in Ireland, the two sides of the Civil War. And I think I read in your memoir, Amnesia, perfect name, by the way, for a memoir, you talked about some Irish politician quoting from...
Oh, yeah, okay. So, how many people are Irish here? Not many, no, okay. Okay, a lot, yeah. Okay, we grew up, we all had to go to school, okay, as everyone has to go to school. We had to learn about the Great War of Independence, yeah, when Ireland freed itself from the monster Britain, okay. We had to learn about we had to learn about the Catholic Church and how amazing it was, how wonderful it was, and why we should all go to Mass every day and all that sort of stuff. And we had to learn about a big, tall, gawky guy called Eamon de Valera, who was the president of the country at the time, you know. And that was the history we were given. And I was asked to make a movie about this other character called Michael Collins by a producer called David Putnam. I didn't like all the literature about the War of Independence. I didn't like republicanism. I didn't like political violence. I didn't like the way it was impinging on our lives at the time, because we just wanted to be smoke dope and listen to the Beatles, you know. But suddenly there was this mayhem going on where there were bombs in streets and people you knew were being killed and stuff like that, you know. So I didn't really appreciate it, but I began to read the history of this Collins chap, who was the antithesis of De Valera. And I thought there was an interesting movie to be made about all of those things that we were taught in school through the one character that would happen in 3 years of his life. And that's why I made the movie, basically. And I made a big movie for Warner Brothers called Interview with the Vampire, which made quite a lot of money. And they asked me, what do you want to do next? And I said, well, actually, you have this film, because they commissioned it originally through David Putnam in your vaults. And they said, okay, go ahead and make it. So, but having announced that I was making it, it was like the entire country thought I was making a national monument, you know? And everybody had an opinion as to what it should be or what it would be. And it was the strangest situation to be in, you know? But it was a great thing to do, and it caused an enormous amount of argument in Ireland. And I suppose, I don't know, it would be like when Steven Spielberg made Lincoln, if the whole issue of the war, the Civil War in America and the kind of slavery issue is still a live issue, which it wasn't when Stephen made Lincoln. You know. But when we made Michael Collins, the issue of political violence was still very real, you know, because there was a armed movement called the IRA, run by a guy called Jerry Adams, though he would deny that. Sorry.
He does deny it.
I did say that, by the way. Okay. And, you know, so it was like making a movie about a historical period that actually had deep resonances in the present, you know. So that's why I made the movie. Can I shut up about that now? Sorry, I've gone on too long about it.
Never going on too long. Well, but it made such an impact that a contemporary politician at the time of the movie's release quoted a character from.
Oh yeah,
movie.
no, I wrote speeches for Michael Collins, where somebody says, "Why are you doing this? Why are you being so vengeful towards the British?" And he said, I forget what he said. Whatever I wrote for. Oh yeah, something about I don't know. I forget what I wrote, but whatever I wrote in those scenes, politicians keep quoting it as the actual words of the actual historical character, which to me was absolutely hilarious. You know, if you go on the internet, you know, you'll find the same things quoted as words that were quoted by Michael Collins, but actually, you know, I wrote them in my house in Bray. So
Good old Bray.
okay.
So, for those who are familiar with Neil's work, you will obviously know that music plays a huge role. It plays a huge role in your life, right? I mean, music.
Well, no, in everyone's life, I would think.
Well, you'd hope, but I mean, let's put it this way. I remember being out in your house and you, in the middle of an interview, kind of jumping up and starting playing the piano.
I was trying to learn the piano at the time. Okay.
Yeah, you were doing well.
Okay.
But the point, I guess, is that, and even reading about your childhood, I mean, you grew up, your father had a big record collection, was into jazz, you listened to a lot of, not jazz?
No, my father wasn't into jazz.
What was
No,
he into?
he was
Big
into
bands?
classical music.
All classical.
My father used to play the fiddle, he used to play Irish jigs and reels, you know, that kind of thing, Irish traditional music, yeah. He didn't like jazz that much.
You're this jazz man with the saxophone.
He didn't like rock and roll. Yeah, I played saxophone for a while. But look, please don't talk about my musical career because it is not worthy of mention.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking that, like, you know, so many of your book titles, your movie titles, are the names of songs.
Okay, I'm terrible at titles. You know, I'm really bad at titles.
Right.
So, I wrote a book of stories, and I used the title of a tune that was written by Dizzy Gillespie called A Night in Tunisia, okay? When I came to make that movie Mona Lisa, I didn't know what the hell to call it. I said, oh, there's a song called Mona Lisa. Great, it's like a gift. You know, when I made The Crying Game, initially I called it The Soldier's Wife, and then I used that Dave Berry tune, The Crying Game. I said, oh, let's call it The Crying Game. I mean, it takes the weight off my shoulders if I can choose the title of a song, you know? But that's
That's as far as it goes.
yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. I was saying to somebody last week that you could see, 2 seconds of a Nil Džordan movie and know that it's a Nil Džordan movie.
Wow. Okay.
You have a very distinctive visual, your whole visual and oral presentation is very specific. At least it seems to me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a compliment. Thank you very much.
And I think, the whole thing about being an auteur, whatever that exactly means, but it seems to me that even though you've made films across quite a wide range of genres, a lot of the same concerns seem to come back again and again. I mean, here tonight, we hear about, the mystery of the human heart. And the mystery of the human heart does seem to be at the core of a lot of your stories.
Well, I like to make movies, and I like to write stories about people who don't fully understand what they are, because I don't think any of us fully understand what we are or why we do what we do. I really don't think we do. And I've never gone to therapy. I've never been a psychotherapist or anything like that. But I would defy anybody to really put an absolute reason on human behavior, because it's irrational, and I think we're driven by forces that we don't fully understand, and that's what I like to make movies about.
Right.
I suppose The Crying Game is a movie about somebody who deeply doesn't understand himself, He thinks he's an Irish Republican, he thinks he's male, he thinks he's heterosexual, and the story, in a way, is an assault on all those presumptions, The Mona Lisa was a story about a man who thought he knew women but realized he hadn't got a clue what women were. And
Right.
they meant themselves, So I do like to make movies that are about those kind of questions,
Yet you do so in a very generous way. It would be very easy, perhaps, to put the boot in on a lot of these characters, but instead you're very uncynical in your portrayal of them.
Well, it's much more interesting to draw a portrait of some person everybody thinks is monstrous, than to do the reverse. Sure. It's much more interesting to me, and I'm not even talking about the character, the trans character we see in The Crying Game. I'm not even talking about that. I mean, to me, it'd be more interesting to make a movie about. I don't want to give any examples, but about people who have done dreadful things and probe the reasons as to why they did them, right, rather than to present heroics and stuff like that.
Sure. And you're obviously a mad movie man. I mean, you have a great love for cinema. You've talked about your admiration for Hitchcock, for example. You have a pretty voracious appetite for all things coming in, right?
I think so, but I mean, if you make movies, you have to watch movies to learn, don't you? You have to.
No better place.
And you have to. I mean, I think they can be very, very beautiful things, because we experience them in real time, like the way we experience music. Mm-hmm. And the reason that Netflix is so maddening is because you can turn it off and turn it back on at every moment, and anytime somebody wants to go to the bathroom or make a cup of tea or whatever. But the experience of watching a movie is like the experience of listening to a song, isn't it?
Right.
It begins, you suffer it, and it ends, Right. And maybe you've loved it, maybe you haven't, but you've had to endure it, you've had to experience it, And that's what I think is a lovely thing. And I think I think people should keep making them, myself.
You mentioned Netflix, and obviously the world has changed a lot since since they arrived, and the other streamers. I mean, it used to be that people made television in order as a stepping stone, as a calling card to get to make a movie. Now it's kind of the other way around. I mean, people make movies in order to get that series.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's a different look. You're not going to destroy the experience of the individual motion picture. You're not. I don't think so. I don't think anybody will. I think it'll always be there. You know, the way an individual play will always be there. You know, something that you watch in real time with an audience, and you experience an emotion that kind of becomes communal. You know, I mean, maybe it'll become, what does Timothy Chalamet say, like opera or ballet? But I don't think so. And by the way, I like ballet and opera too.
Yeah.
You know? But
Well,
I mean,
he suffered.
I don't think it's going to die. You know, because I think people want it. You know, they need it in a way.
Well, we had a surprise movie here last night. It's been a new thing for the festival, and we screened Barry Lyndon.
Oh wow, cool.
Right, and it was just kind of amazing to see it up on the big screen. It's
You showed it here.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had a new print last year for the 50th anniversary of it.
Well, that's a movie. The central scene where they're playing that Schubert trio or whatever it is, and Stanley lets the piece of music play as long as it should play. Where I don't know what exactly Ryan O'Neill is, you know, kind of dealing with some countess or something, but whatever it does that thing that cinema does, doesn't it? It exists in real time. It doesn't, you know, it spends its energies in real time, and it's pretty great, yeah.
Although,
Except Ryan O'Neill's performance, I'm sorry. Come on.
yeah, although watching it,
He wasn't that bad though, was he really? I mean, the movie survived his performance, didn't it? Yeah.
you know, it seems my daughter is here visiting, and we were talking about it last night, and it seemed to me as if it was very intentional. He almost wanted to drain the character out of the performances, so that they were very flat. I mean, it wasn't just him. I mean, they were all really pretty flat performances, and yet so that you know, he could focus on other cinematic ways of telling the emotional contours. So there was very little dialogue actually in the film, and when it's delivered, it's almost like Bresson.
But there was a wonderful voiceover, wasn't there? He told things before they happened, and I went, "That's genius." Okay. Anyway, his performance wasn't great.
No,
I'm sorry.
No, but we share a name, but that's about it. Audience members, I know here, people have been talking about you coming for the last 10 days that I've been here, and people were even asking other guests questions about you, like like Stephen. Stephen had to deal with a lot of questions about. He thought they were all going to be asking about him, and it ended up they were asking about you. So, Stephen Ray, that is. So, you know, I can always ask you a question, but I know there's lots of people here who would love to, and we're not going to go into an endless question fest. So if you have a question or an observation, if you can keep it pretty snappy, so that we can listen to Neil respond. And the first one is up. You've got to. Cheers.
Hi, Nil.
Hi.
Welcome to Belgrade.
Thank you very much.
And for sharing your life and filmography experience. And it's I'm in awe. So
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
a bit starstruck.
Okay.
But I just thought of a question right now while you were presenting, and it's what have you not made yet that you would like to make?
That's a terrible question.
Oh, I'm so
That
sorry.
is very, very cruel. It really is. There are so many things. I wrote like when my daughters were very young. I wrote a musical set in space. Yeah, it was a backstage musical set in outer space. It was called Lucky Stars. I never got to make it, and then my daughters grew up, so I wasn't able. There are so many things. If you make movies, and I've been doing it and writing for, more years than I'd prefer to remember. There are so many things that you think you could have done,
You just reminded me of the sentimental value right now with this.
Okay, yeah. Well, I never got to make that little film, but I might write it as a children's book. I might. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And another? Any other questions? There's one here, this gentleman in the front row, and then we'll follow over here after.
Nil, being a proud Irishman as you are.
Okay.
And we started 40 years ago as a director of Džordanom. And you said it yourself, you watch movies, it's your career, it's your profession. Going forward, like the last 40 years has been fantastic. Not just for you, but for Irish actors and directors. Going forward, you see anybody that we should be looking out for as the next director, the next writer, an Irishman that we don't know, because we know the actors, we see them every day, but they need to give us.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about Ireland is that actually there's extraordinary acting talent that has exhibited itself, isn't there? And there is extraordinary writing talent, and there are extraordinary directors, but I don't see the kind of the career path of a director, and that makes me a bit sad. I mean, I grew up with Jim Sheridan. We went to college together. We had a theatre group together, and you can see Jim's development from the first movie he made through all of those great engaged movies he's made, and you see an entire voice there. I think we need more directors in Ireland that will express a similar kind of voice. The only one I see that actually has that is Martin McDonagh. And I mean, when you see in Bruges, there's an entire kind of mindset there. You go, whoa, that's something else. And then you see the next one he makes, and the next, along with his brother too. But I think the effort for Irish people, the effort to make their first movie often is so big, they end up being exhausted. That kind of thing. And there doesn't seem to be the culture there to nurture, a second, a third, and a fourth movie. That would be my worry going forward. Not only in Ireland, everywhere, I think. And I think.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, that was a very long answer, wasn't it? Okay.
You can take as long as you want.
No,
the questions have to be short.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
I just want to ask, how do you come up with the idea to name the film and just use that period of history, Byzantium, your film called it?
Byzantium?
Yeah,
Okay, you saw that movie?
yeah.
Thank you. I love that film.
One of the few.
Okay, yeah. Very few people saw that film. Well, that was a play written by a woman called...
We are in Byzantium.
What?
This is Byzantium.
Yeah. You mean Byzantium, the movie? Yeah.
Serbia was part of it a long time.
Serbia was part of Byzantium at one time.
Oh, of course, yes. But you're okay. It also was a play by William Butler Yeats, or a poem by William Butler Yeats. Yeah. Anyway, I was sent a script by Stephen Woolley, my producer. It was written by a woman called Maura Buffini, and she wrote a thing called a vampire play. Yeah, and she called it Byzantium. So I was given that. And with Maura, I kind of massaged the script and went through it. We hadn't gotten quite enough money, but I think we made quite a lovely film in the end. I regard it as a companion piece to Interview with the Vampire, but in many ways, kind of more interesting than Interview with the Vampire, but it didn't get a lot of exposure. But thank you for seeing it. Pardon?
They needed to put Dracula in.
No. We look. Bram Stoker wrote Dracula. Bram Stoker was Irish. I gave the vampire roots in the west of Ireland. That was fun doing that. Okay.
There was a bunch of hands out the back there, and while I'm just thinking about. I'm thinking about all the cast. I mean, I mentioned earlier your production designer on Company of Wolves, Anton First, who went on to Batman, so many things. And I think Susie Figgis, who cast this film, cast quite
she
a lot.
cast all of my films,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
You've a great.
No, but Susie had a big career outside of me.
Right,
you know,
sure, of
as
course.
did Anton. You know,
As did Anton.
I've just been lucky to work with good people, really. I think.
Yeah, but lucky. I mean, it also. I mean, you make your own luck, kind of stuff. I mean, I mean, look at the actors from the likes of Stephen Ray, who you've worked. You know, his first movie was your first movie. You've done a dozen movies with him. You know, finding. You know, Eamon Owens to play Francie Brady.
Oh well, that's a trick that I've always found very good. If you cast somebody who's never acted before and you put them together with professional actors, the professional actors get so jealous, yeah, because they see this kid do stuff that they just can't remember how they do it for the first time, you know, and it's a really interesting dynamic. And if you get somebody like Eamon Owens, he keeps all of the other actors on their toes, you know, and he makes them have to relearn their entire techniques and their entire bag of tricks, because everybody has a bag of tricks, don't they? Except a non-actor, you know.
Your first contact with film production, if I'm not mistaken, was when John Boorman asked you to help on his script of Excalibur.
He did, yes, that's what he did, yeah.
What did you do in it?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I rewrote the script, but I didn't get a credit, but that's the way it is. You know, he had a big, long 400-page script, and he went through it with me, and I began to rewrite it. And then at one stage he said, I'm off to make the movie now. I said, you can't do that. And he wanted me around to talk to, so I proposed that I make a documentary on him making the film, which is basically like a film school for me. And I was very lucky to be given that opportunity.
And that was the start of it.
Well, that was,
One of the starts.
That was when I got to know what it meant to what it was to make a motion picture, really, you know. But there's somebody else.
There is.
If an argument could be made that in the economically, let's say, poorer places, there is more rich, there is more innocence, and certainly Ireland of 1990s is not the Ireland of right now, this kind of economy superpower. What would you say this kind of economic shift has done to the filmmakers in Ireland, to their approach to innocence, to their edge?
Well, it's done two things. On the one hand, it's given them the support systems to make movies, you know, and on the other hand, it's kind of taken away the carpet on which their imaginations should be resting, you know. I mean, contemporary Ireland is a strange place. It's very frantic. It's very capitalistic. It's very how would you describe it? People. It's unaffordable almost, you know. When I started writing, I was on the dole, and everybody I knew that was a creative person was on the dole. They could live on the dole. They could find a way to live. They could rent a room. They could survive. Now it's almost impossible to live like that, you know. So Ireland has changed in a lot of ways, you know, and that's going to have to find some solutions to insoluble realities, I think. Does that answer your question? I hope it did. Okay.
There was another one at the back, I think, close to you. There you go.
First of all, thank you for sharing your wonderful film. And
Okay.
You also just mentioned like economical position of young filmmakers today.
Yeah.
And since your work was were themes that you have in your works and were also quite controversial, did you ever have a problem with censorship, or were you ever stopped of fundings? Because like also like what would you say for young filmmakers how to?
Okay, I'm aware that in Serbia there's an extreme problem. I was given, and that's one of the reasons why I was kind of worried about coming here. I was sent by the European Film Commission a letter from the community of Serbian filmmakers about the fact that funding is being denied them. I have never had to suffer that kind of censorship. You know, the only censorship I've ever had to suffer was commercial censorship. You know, TV companies saying, no, we don't want to do that. I've never been told what not to say by a state, you know. And I think it destroys the culture, basically, if that is the reality under which filmmakers have to work here. And I'm glad you asked that question because it's been bugging me a bit, you know. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, a couple of the viewers last night at Barry Lyndon said that when that was first released back in '75, Kubrick wouldn't allow it be released here. He wouldn't.
Here?
Yeah.
Why not?
Because of the politics, I guess. You didn't like them back then.
No, you're not. You're thinking of Clockwork
No,
Orange.
no, Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon.
No, Barry Lyndon was shown.
I'm just quoting the two people who told me this last night. It was screened here. They were wrong.
They could have been. They were probably thinking of Clockwork Orange. Stanley he withdrew that film from circulation
everywhere, yeah.
because he was accused of fomenting social violence. Yeah, basically. But I think Barry Lyndon was a big commercial failure for Kubrick, you know, and actually a critical failure too. It's only with time that the kind of grace of the film has come to be seen. But that often happens, you know. So, you know, sometimes you do a piece of work that people reject, but after repeated viewings, they understand it better. You know, it often happens to the filmmakers themselves,
Right.
You know.
Well, it kind of happened with you with We're No Angels. I mean, I'm just reading recently that that's getting a big critical reassessment.
Well, they re-released it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's. Yeah, I liked that film. It was people objected to it when it came out, but there was anyway. I'm glad people are reassessing that film.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was very funny. But another question from the audience. There's loads of them, I know. There's lady in red hair.
Once again, Vivian, could you tell please just a few words about your great film adaptation for Interview with Vampire? Because it's really a very great movie, and I'm just curious also as director how the work was going on. So how was your relationships with the writer? Was it tough work? Was it very pleasant work? Was it your idea actually to make this film adaptation? And was it how deep you were in the process of casting? I'm very curious about your idea to write. Very brilliant, really brilliant.
Okay. No. In Interview with the Vampire, that's what you're talking about. I was asked by Anne Rice and David Geffen to make a movie of her book. They've been trying to make it for about 20 or 30 years. After I made Company of Wolves, Angela Carter wanted to make a movie called Vampirella, which she wrote a little script for, which didn't quite work in my mind, but it bugged me a bit. And then Angela died very young. So I kind of always imagined Interview with the Vampire was a companion piece to The Company of Wolves, you know. One was about werewolves, this would be about vampires. And we've all seen, I grew up, I used to have to cycle to my local cinema past Bram Stoker's house in Marino in Dublin. And it was the creepiest. Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, he lived in Marino, which was on the way to my local cinema. And I used to go see vampire movies in my local cinema. And passing his house used to terrify the life out of me. So when I was asked to do Interview with the Vampire, I really welcomed the challenge of that, you know. And I always thought vampire movies were huge, dramatic, kind of gothic things. But when you actually look at the Christopher Lee ones, they're almost corny, aren't they?
They're very camp.
You know, except for Bride of Frankenstein. Have you ever seen Bride of Frankenstein, the original, by James Whale? That was extraordinary. And that to me was the kind of aesthetic that a great vampire movie should have, you know, and I tried to give it that. Okay. Thank you.
There's so many hands coming up. I'm just thinking, though, about the fact that, you know, you are that pretty rare individual as being both a screenwriter, never mind all of your fiction novels, etc. To write screenplays and also to direct them, to write them at the level you do and to direct them at the level you do, it's pretty rare that it's one and the same person these days, for a long time.
Perhaps it is, but I mean, if you've got a visual imagination and you write a series of images down or a sequence down, it kind of makes itself in a way, But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of, there used to be writer directors.
There used to be.
Maybe not anymore. Okay, I'm a dying breed. Okay.
We're all a dying breed. We have any more questions here?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I would like to ask about the Crying Game movie and what was the most difficult part about making this movie and how did you navigate this?
About the crying game? Okay. The most difficult part was finding an actor to play the character Dil. Okay, that was the single most difficult thing. And I actually spoke to Stanley Kubrick about it, because I used to go out to his house and he used to, we'd have a Chinese dinner kind of thing, And he said to me, "What are you doing next?" And I told him the story. And he said, "Okay, so you're going to cast a guy who's going to convince the audience that he's a girl for half of the movie." I said, "Yes, that's what I'm doing." And he said, "And not only that, but this guy has to be a black guy." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, well, you'll be making it in 5 or 6 years' time," he said. And I said, "No, Stanley, I'm making it next month." He said, we still hadn't found the character that could play Dil. And then Susie Figgis and Derek Jarman told me about this character who hung around the club scene called Jay Davidson. And Jay had never acted before. And Jay had exactly the quality that I'd written, So I did what I often didn't before. I cast a non-actor with, very well-known actors like Stephen Ray and all that sort of stuff. And it became what it was, really. I mean, I think part of what made the film work for audiences was that nobody had seen. If I had cast Wesley Snipes, for example, which would have been an impossibility, or say Timothée Chalamet, for example, everybody would have, "Oh, that's Timothée Chalamet playing a girl." Do you understand what I mean? So we had to present a convincing character who presented as female to an audience, and it had to be a non-actor, really. That was one of the most difficult things about making this film, basically.
What happened with her? Or she later?
What's that?
Was she acting later or he?
He was very smart. He was offered enormous amounts of money to play Queen Nefertiti in some space opera. He took it and then said, "I don't ever want to act again. It's not for me." And now he's buffed up. Now he's muscled up. The way most of the gay community are. And I'd love to make a movie about him and Stephen Ray as they are now. That'd be very interesting.
That would be.
Because Jay looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger now.
Really?
Yeah, I swear to God. Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen, and just to say, I mean, there are not many collaborations in cinema anywhere in the world that has been so successful and so sustained as yours, your and Stephen's collaboration. And I mean, it was his first film, was your first film.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you keep going back to the well?
Well, I mean, I think he's a great actor. Wouldn't you all agree?
I would. I think
he's a very subtle actor, and I'm lucky that I've had somebody at certain points that I could write for, And Paolo Sorrentini works with that wonderful older theatrical actor.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar thing, They can do really subtle things, and they can make kind of characters you wouldn't normally notice come alive, without the big dramas that other actors would demand before they play a character,
He has that rare quality. He's of likability. He's a very likable screen presence. I mean, we were talking the other day about. He was talking about Jessie Buckley and getting her award, and about her likability as compared to, say, a Meryl Streep that has a kind of a coldness.
What's wrong with Meryl Streep?
Not that I look again. I'm only
mean to say?
I'm only quoting Stephen Ray.
whatever, yeah, okay.
But he was comparing. He was saying, that certain actors have this real. It jumps off the screen, a likability. They could be playing a psycho killer, and you kind of. And Stephen always was one of these people who, no matter, I mean, there's many aspects of the character up there of Fergus that would be pretty hard going if you met him in a bar.
Oh, no, I know. But I mean, I did speak to Stephen as I was writing the part,
Right.
And I did show him the first 30 pages, before I'd finished the script and stuff like that. I did discuss it with him because I was writing it with him in mind. But, I think Stephen regards himself as an interpreter. Like he's been directed by Harold Pinter, by Samuel Beckett. Stephen Ray has been directed by Samuel Beckett. Okay? I don't know if Samuel Beckett said anything through the entire rehearsal process, but he was directed by him. Sam Shepard. And, he regards himself as an interpreter of writers, really. And I've been lucky enough that he's kind of regarded himself as an interpreter of what I do as well. He also he's read my latest audiobook, which you all have to buy, okay?
Very good.
It's called The Landscape, what's it called again? The Library of Traumatic Memory, okay? Available on Kindle, I believe, yeah. But he does a wonderful version of that novel that I wrote, okay?
I will go and listen to him. A question right there in the middle.
Hello, welcome to Belgrade again.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. Well, thank you for this movie. We watched it when it came out. I think it came to Belgrade in maybe the same year or the next year. It was a very difficult period. There were wars in this period. We were under sanctions. It was all very grim and hopeless. We were students without future, but this film really took us out of our grim reality and made us think about something else. And it was a wonderful film then. It's still a wonderful film. So just thank you for this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to say applause for that.
So,
Yeah, it really does hold up.
thank you.
I mean, not all films. I mean, there is this films can date.
They only say that about movies. They never say that about novels. Nobody ever says, "Oh yeah, that Room with the View, that novel you wrote, it really holds up." They only say it about movies. It's weird, isn't it? I don't know why.
But there are books that don't hold. I mean, like what's it, Jack?
Yeah, there are books that are no good.
But Jack Kerouac's, what's it, On the Road?
It's no good.
Maybe there was never any good. Maybe that
Okay,
was
no, I know. I do
you know what I
you're
mean?
saying. No, and thank you for saying that. But it is a strange thing that they. I mean, if you listen to Pink Floyd, for example, if you listen to "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," you say that really holds up. You don't say. You say that's a great piece of music. It still is a great piece of music, don't you?
It is a really good piece.
But thank you for saying it really holds up.
It does. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll just take one last question from the gent with the beard and the hand up, and then we'll wrap it up. Of course, you'll be able to see Neil marching the streets of Belgrade for the next 24 hours. Grab him at any chance. Sir, what's your question or your comment?
Watching the Crying Game for the first time now, it was a very interesting case of a film where I genuinely couldn't predict what would happen in the next scene.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, what is your writing process for such a script? How do you come up with a story that unfolds?
Well, I mean, basically, if you look at the script, it's a series of dramatic situations to abuse the central character. I mean, I to question the central character. He's an IRA guy. He believes in violence. He's white. He's Irish. He's a nationalist. And
he's hetero.
And he's heterosexual. Yeah, of course he is, yeah. And the screenplay is a set of questions to that central character. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, I didn't think of it that way when I was writing it, but I was aware I was deconstructing this man through the whole process, And that's maybe that's when you make something interesting, I think, perhaps,
Okay, one last one. The very last one.
I had the pleasure of listening to you
just mentioned your novel. Could you tell us something about what it's about? It seems to be futuristic and stuff.
My novel, the novel I've just written a science fiction novel. I don't think there are any Irish science fiction novels, but maybe there are that I haven't been aware of.
Dracula.
That's a Gothic novel.
I know, teasing them.
Okay,
teasing
no,
them,
no,
teasing
maybe Gulliver's Travels actually
Yeah,
is a science
right.
fiction book. But anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to write something fantastical set in the landscape I know, because this is a terrible thing to say. There's an enormous amount of Irish writing at the moment, and I find a lot of it depressingly realistic, you know, and depressingly confessional. And I hope I'm not quoted on this, because they'll kill me back home for that quote. But I wanted to write something that existed in the stratosphere, you know, that was pure imagination, really. And that's what I've done. I've written a science fiction book. Okay.
Tomorrow, you should come along to Neil's reading of that book, and Mary Black, the writer here in the third row, will be having a conversation with Neil about that book and all things literary. And I think with that, I think we should just wrap it up. It's been a very busy film week. This is our closing movie. We opened last week, as you know, with the first feature film from a young Irish director in Cork, Hristo.
Very good film, actually.
Yeah, right?
I thought it was great.
Yeah, me too.
Good, yeah.
And we're closing now with, you know, one of the most important films in Irish film history. And it's just a pleasure to have Neil here to talk to you and answer some of your questions. So please put it together for Nil Džordan.
Thank you very much, and I hope that Serbian filmmaking survives its current assault on its integrity. Okay? Thank you.
Here, here.